Good evening and welcome very much to Conversations, where it's my pleasure to welcome to the program Dr. Ali El-Houderi, who is currently ambassador to the United Nations after a long and distinguished career within the Foreign Service of Libya. He has an earned, if I may say so, PhD in economics from New York University. And Dr. El-Houderi, welcome very, very much to Conversations.
Good to be here.
We're talking now in November of 1993, and there's been a great deal in the press recently. We're going to want to get into it, this question of the Lockerbie charges and the two men that have been said they should be handed over the indictments. We're going to want to talk about that in detail. It's been on your plate, obviously. But I wonder if maybe we could, at the initial outset here, have you share with us, for the general American audience that's viewing, Libya itself. It's relevant to understanding, in a certain sense, that the political and economic structure and the attempt at social organization that Libya has encoded in the word the Jamahiriya has certain characteristics of it which are unique to Libya in a very real sense and are relevant to the issues we want to discuss. And I wonder if maybe you could, with your weaving it in with some of your own background. You were ambassador to the United States in 1979, 81. But I wonder if you could weave it in and share with us a little bit the unique structure, political and economic structure in Libya, and then from that perspective, perhaps we could talk about current events and the world situation from that perspective. But maybe you could share the uniqueness of the structure of the Libyan political, social, and economic organizational system.
Well, I will try. Probably I'm not the best one to outline some of this, but I'll give you at least my personal views and personal ideas of the economic and political system in Libya. As you said, to a lot of people, they consider the Libyan example is a unique case in terms of it's different from existing theories of capitalism and before that communism. Mm-hmm. We believe in Libya that the international theory, which was outlined in the Green Book, it deals with three chapters: the economic chapters, the political chapter, and the social chapter. I will try to address the political and the economic and the social in a very brief way. We believe that in order to have a successful participation by the people, you have to involve them. Mm-hmm. And how can you involve all people? We divided the country into basic people's conferences, where each human being can participate in the saying of his or her political or economic or social affairs. And with that, we were able to involve everybody to participate and have their saying in day-to-day affairs,
which might be seen as a direct participatory democracy rather than a representative democracy, which so much of the world thinks of when they think of that term.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. This is why we call it direct democracy, because there is no representation. Because in our belief, representation, no matter how good it might be in the eyes of some, but still does not really reflect the aspiration and hopes of everybody. It only reflects the aspiration and hopes of the representative of what he or she wants to do. We involved everybody, And in the beginning, a lot of people, they said, how is it going to work? How can you involve everybody? And it was possible by dividing the country into many basic people's conferences, which is, it was similar to what it used to be here, the town hall meetings, where people come, discuss issues of affecting them daily, and then at the end, they finalize what they agree in their meeting. In our case, after we divided the whole country into major basic conferences, they have, each conference have an agenda which deals with their locality, and they have an agenda which deals with the country as a whole. And then through these basic people's conferences, we have the General People's Congress, where all these basic people's conferences, they gather their spokesman or representative to carry out what they agreed on in these basic people's conferences. They are not representative. They only carry what they agreed in these basic people's conferences to the General People's Congress.
I see. Two questions. One is the agenda. You have a local agenda, national agenda, and they discuss the international context within which the country operates as well.
That's
at
right.
These local people's congresses.
That's right.
And in a sense, you've tried to keep sovereignty of the nation, as much as it is possible to do, in the hands of the people themselves in what would be seen as a direct participatory democracy. I repeat that word again because it seems to me we here in the United States, groping toward town meetings and so forth, are dealing with some of these questions. Do you think that this process has been aided by the historical development of increased communications? And I wonder, how many of those people's congresses are there? There's a couple of thousand or so, and how many would be in each of those local people's congresses?
Well, we've been through a lot of experience with this. The Authority of the People, it was established in 1977 in Libya. And we've gone through a lot of process of trial and error. And we believe that we were successful in making people show interest, because nobody can decide on your behalf as much as you want to, no matter how honest or good or efficient. But you only can say you're saying or what you want. By involving people in this process through these basic people's conferences, which we had many experience. In terms of number, we change it. Sometimes it was close to 1,500 in Libya. But now it was limited to less than 400 basic people's conferences. But this is, each country has its needs and specialities or requirement. And we found people show more interest and more willing to participate than the apathy we used to have before we have this kind of system, because they usually say, we don't believe these elected people, and those are so-and-so, and they just blame the elected people. Now they don't have anybody to blame except themselves.
Because they are participants.
Right. And they have to choose what's good for them, and nobody will choose something against his or her wish.
it must catch your attention that, familiar as you are with the situation back home, as it were, all of the discussion within the United States in the last political season and continuing about town meetings, and the sense of people here in the United States feeling a sense of being left out of the political process, and the attempt to use these town meeting and involve the people in a direct dialogue, as it were, and that we're groping toward something which, as you indicated earlier, we had in our early history, the town meeting concept, but we're groping toward that now here in the United States. I wonder if perhaps you can't feel in a certain sense that sometimes the United States is groping toward that, which Libya has been experimenting and trying to build over the period of time that you've politically organized yourself.
Well,
recent experience.
I was watching the campaign of President Clinton when he was preparing himself for the election, and I think he was probably one of the best people I've seen using the town meetings to reach the people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the most direct and honest way to reach people, by involving them,
Mm-hmm.
not just by telling them, but also by learning from them.
Mm-hmm.
The people, they never lie. They tell you as it is.
Mm-hmm.
But when you stay away from the people, you lose track and you don't know what's happening. And I think some presidents, sometimes they don't have vision of the future because they are not in contact with their people. And the only thing they hear is either through what the intelligence tell them or what the bureaucrat tell them. But when they deal with people, they know exactly what's going on. And I think President Clinton right now is a good example of using town meetings and involving people, even when it is difficult to involve people. Sometimes he's not using it enough, but I think he's using it. And I think he's going back to how this country was founded.
Mm-hmm.
And what made this country strong is we the people.
Mm-hmm.
And not I am the president or I am the bureaucrat, because people knows best. And I think if we eliminate them in the process of making decisions, then no matter how good these decisions might be, it cannot work.
Yeah.
And I've seen him using that in his health plan, in his NAFTA plan. And I think he's a good communicator in terms of using town meetings. And I think which is similar to what we have back home.
Mm-hmm.
We are not as, the literacy in my country is not as in this country. But still, it's working in both countries because people, they feel they are the one making decisions. So they need to give it all their power
Mm-hmm.
to ensure the success of what they are doing. But when people are just watching,
Mm-hmm.
You cannot count on them.
Yeah, and you have also structured your political institutions in terms of this new idea that perhaps more of the world should give a serious attention to, if I might
Yes.
suggest, because it's in keeping with the technological realities that are emerging and answer some of the questions we've been dealing with ourselves here in the United States questions. One of the town meetings also that he was dealing with after the election, and then of course there was Mr. Perot, and there was Mr. Bush and the other candidates, Mr. Jerry Brown and others, who've sensed this mass discontent among a number of people. But one of them was the economic conference he had, where he brought economic council together. And the economic context within Libya, I think it might be good for people to understand, is as well unique in the sense it was not a communist system that you were in league with, as it were, or nor is it a monopolistic capitalist idea, as some people have rightfully perhaps questioned, but it has a unique economic component as well. And I wonder if maybe you could address that.
Well, the idea, we believe that in order to be politically free, you have to be economically free.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot have a political freedom unless you have economic freedom. And this is why the link is so important. For example, the second aspect of the third international theory in the Green Book is it deals with the economic question when each individual should be economically free.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to have economic freedom for people, they have to have their saying or their participation.
Mm-hmm. Again, back to the idea of participation.
Yes.
Yeah.
We believe that the country, the government, should not own
Mm-hmm.
everything,
Mm-hmm.
but should own only certain things that individuals, as individuals, cannot own. But the rest should be left to the people.
So, in a sense, you believe in the principle of private property ownership,
Oh yes, this is
which is what much of the world has been.
not just we believe in
Yes,
it.
yeah.
We consider it as holy as nobody can hamper or play with it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important, economic freedom and economic private enterprise. This is well respected and well maintained, because we believe that if the country owns everything, it's going to destroy everything.
That's where you ended up in the Soviet Union
And
with
this
the
exact-
Politburo and apparatchiks.
That's an example of when the state control everything.
Mm-hmm.
Also, we don't believe that certain individuals should own or control everything.
Which
Then another problem will arise. We believe that, for example, economic institutions should be owned and shared by the people who work or interested in that particular institution, and not wage earners,
Mm-hmm.
but to be owners of that institutions.
To be partners,
Right,
and
partners
owners.
and not wage earners.
So you might be in accord with what is a relatively small development in our economy, which have been called employee stock ownership plans, or ESOPs, that have been put forth, is in keeping with the economic theory that you encourage in Libya. The idea that the workers who make up an enterprise should be also the owners
The
of
owners.
the
That's
capital assets of that enterprise.
That's exactly right.
That's a very important idea that we're groping with here in this country as well.
And I think the link between the economic and political is working very well, because people have to have a feedback every day, and they will really be more creative, more sensitive, and more willing to sacrifice when there is a need for sacrifice, but also to look for the not just of just making profit, but making contribution.
Being participating
Right.
in
Yeah.
the process.
That's
itself.
exactly right. So
Yeah.
it's working in many examples very well, and I think unfortunately not very few who are aware of what's going on in terms of Libya. We have certain setbacks, but it's minimal.
What system hasn't had setbacks? And I think it was Winston Churchill who said, and what you're describing is a participatory, true democracy in a certain sense. And it was Winston Churchill who said democracy is the most is the worst system in the world except all the others. Democracy is a very important word, and the attempt to involve the people in the economic and political process of the society of which they're part is an important, seminally important concept that we're all looking for as we grope into looking for a new system of organization of this planet at this crucial time. You do call Libya the socialist Libyan,
yes.
Jamahiriya.
Right.
So people get confused with that term, perhaps. And I wonder if maybe you could just address yourself to that, because you've had to meet the needs of a great number of the people through government activity or so forth.
Well, the socialist that we mean is completely different from the socialist in the term of former communism system and other systems. Socialist means giving equal opportunity for all. And to give equal opportunity, not just in terms of theory, but in terms of practice. Equal justice, economically and socially and politically. Without it, we think the meaning of socialist doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. And this is why we try to give the meaning socialist a better meaning than just the name socialist as used in the communist system. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's completely different. We do not believe in the communist system before even the collapse of the Soviet Union.
I know.
A long time ago, we predicted that the communist system would not survive, mm-hmm. no matter how successful it might be. We believe also that the danger of the capitalistic system, in the sense when it becomes the whole wealth in the very few hands.
Yes, this is happening detrimentally in the Western economies. Yeah.
And the monopoly, no matter how successful might be, but eventually they will create problem for the whole country. And this is why we don't believe in each system. And eventually, I think the economic system, if it is not based on participation and giving equal opportunity for all, it would be impossible to have a society where people can have peace of mind.
Yeah. Reading the daily paper, we can see now that our major there is a concentration of wealth and a concentration of capital assets that is increasing in the Western economies. And we see at the same time, anyone reading the newspaper can see our major corporations downsizing or laying off thousands as the technology increasingly is able to be responsible for production. And we don't have, with our labor only or wage earner system only of distributing income, a way of distributing income to the masses of the people that would allow them to buy that which the mass-produced economy could produce. And as an economist, you would be aware that if you don't have a market for a mass-produced goods, it doesn't matter how much you can produce. If the people can't afford to buy them, the system isn't going to work.
That's exactly right.
Uh-huh.
Even when
and this is a major problem confronting the American economy, as you might see it, and the world economy.
That's true.
And you've addressed these within, and have attempted to address them, difficult as they are, within the system in Libya.
Lack of distribution in terms of everything. It might look okay in the outside, but it's not helping the people.
Yeah, right. Well, I think it's interesting to set that tone, and we could go to a great deal of that. You were ambassador to the United States in '79 through '81 before.
Yes, I was Libyan ambassador to the United States.
And you had an ongoing relation. You have a good understanding of this country, and and now you've been for 2 years now, just about exactly 2 years now as we talk, the ambassador at the United Nations, and you've been confronted. We want to talk about this issue because through the years you've been, if I may suggest, Libya has been submitted to charges of terrorism. You'll be well familiar with that. People have called it a terrorist state. Your country was bombed in 1986 based upon information that was proven later to be erroneous, that it was even the rationale by which that was done. There were many scores of people killed in that bombing, and you've been targeted as a terrorist country unjustly in the minds of many people. And more recently, you have this matter of the Lockerbie downing, which has had to consume your attention because so much attention has been directed at that in the Security Council and by the United States. I wonder if maybe you could, from your position, how it's affected you in your tenure this last 2 years as ambassador to the United Nations, and help shed light on the way you see that situation that has been so much in the press recently.
Well, I don't know where to start.
It was such a terrible business in the first place.
Well, as soon as I arrived here, after 14 days of my arrival, the indictment came that 2 Libyans were involved in this so-called Lockerbie problem. So from that point, we are busy. I've been busy all the time. I think we believe from the start that political problems, cannot be solved through other means of injecting other problems or differences in this situation. The whole situation started as a criminal indictment. And a criminal indictment require a court decision. But to involve the Security Council in a criminal indictment, it's unfortunate, and it was a precedent. And I think because of the hostility existed between the United States, especially during the Reagan administration, and to a less extent during the Bush administration, contributed to conveniently chosen Libya as a scapegoat.
As a scapegoat.
Right. And conveniently chosen Libya because of the misinformation about Libya distributed in this country for so long, and mainly during the Reagan administration.
Which has been almost consistent. I mean, it was Bernard Kalb who resigned.
Right, because
of the obvious disinformation campaign that the press went along with, all the way from saying, if I may, let me tick off of you, that there were hit squads that had been sent to America to assassinate the President of the United States. Totally untrue, fabricated out of whole cloth. The charges of a discotheque bombing in Berlin, which was the rationale by which we bombed your country in the dead of the night in April 1986, was not the case. Libya was not involved. It was shown to be such, and yet people will still use that as a pretext for calling you a terrorist country. And the fact that you calling Libya a terrorist country and the disinformation about that, and the context of trying to paint you in that sort of a view, has in the court of public opinion has been unfortunately successful.
Well, it was successful because of when people get to hear these stories every day.
Yes.
Sometimes even our people start to think, are we really that bad? And are we really engaged in any of this? So I think the mass media here contributed, some of it by design, some of it by ignorance, to the picturing Libya as a terrorist country, which is not. We are a victim of terrorism.
Indeed.
Libya was suffer recently and in the old days a lot because of terrorism inflicted on Libyan citizens. The raid in 1986, it was unjustified by President Reagan at that time, and a lot of innocent lives get killed for no reason.
And they never apologize.
No.
No, and they will say, if I may, that they have intelligence that security will not allow them to make available, so that the American people who would ask, or the press who would ask, Seymour Hersh wrote a telling article on that, and others, that they won't make it available. So we must be in the dark, in a star chamber proceedings, which makes one very suspect of this context of these two Libyans, which obviously Libya has denied any involvement in the Lockerbie bombing. They denounce it, and they denounce international terrorism, and have.
Well, we stated our position with regard to international terrorism in general.
Obviously, sure.
We are against it, and we are against any terrorism that could endanger human, innocent lives anywhere.
Of course.
But unfortunately, they chose Libya, as I said, for expediency and for conveniency. At that time, unfortunately, President Clinton inherited this situation. And it's difficult to deal with it. It's very complicated issue. Many times they rely on what the intelligence gathering give them, but sometimes on many occasions they were wrong.
Yes, they've been almost consistently wrong, one could say.
The latest example is what they said about the Chinese boat, which was supposedly carrying chemical weapons going to the Middle East, to some country. And they were tracing it, and they said, we have information from our American intelligence, and the whole thing proven to be wrong. I think we should not rely heavily on what the intelligence might do, because sometimes they just fabricate it. And after they fabricate it, they try to cover what they are doing by engaging in other things. And sometimes, after repeating it, they believe it.
Yeah, they begin to believe. It's called like the big lie.
Yes.
Goebbels used. Yeah, yeah.
And they try to convince others that this is the way.
Yeah.
So we have differences, at least in the past, with the United States, because of certain issues like Palestine, like certain African problem who were seeking independence, like Namibia, like Zimbabwe, like what's now known as South Africa. We had differences of opinion on some of these issues.
Or, if I may, and from an American perspective, we might just say, having gone through the participatory democracy which you've attempted, and direct participatory democracy, and the economic concepts that you attempt to establish in Libya, which is in advance of the institutions which we have inherited from the historical situation here in the United States, it might be as though just as the United States with Thomas Jefferson started a new concept of democracy, and the ancient regime or the Louis XIV may have looked across the ocean and said, what is this fledgling little bunch of people trying to talk about democracy? Here in the United States, where we have representative democracy and economic plutocracy, and even oligarchic plutocracy in terms of the ownership of the wealth that so many people are feeling, and economic difficulties, It could be that at an ideological level, they would be in opposition to what you stand for, just as Louis XIV might have been in opposition to Thomas Jefferson, whose political and economic concepts were in advance historically of the way in which the broader world society is moving, if you can understand.
Oh, certainly, yes. I think some of these differences are real. Some of these differences are imaginary. We are a small country.
Yes.
And we want to be left alone. We want to contribute to peaceful coexistence among nations based on respect, on understanding. And I think this is the best civilized way to deal with. Unfortunately, it did not work so far with the previous American administrations, because they've been so hostile to us. They don't even talk like civilized country. I know these countries. I lived in this country enough to know that this country is not bad. It's good.
No, it's got a
But unfortunately, sometimes in the previous administrations, they have very bad feeling about us, about Libya, about anything comes from Libya. They didn't even sit, diplomats or any level, they didn't even talk to see what's going on, what went wrong, what can we do to correct it? Is there any way we can deal with each other to see how we think or what kind of improvement we can make? They just try to use us as a scapegoat and as a whipping boy to conveniently to threat others who want to be independent. We don't have a reason to fight the United States. The United States and American people are not our enemy. They are our friends, and they are people like us. I could be an American. So being an American, it doesn't, but I think the previous American administration, they've been so hostile to us, and they chose Libya conveniently to settle certain differences, but I think they were mistaken. And Libya, at least the revolution, has been there for about 24 years. And it is strong not because of the military. It is strong because it is the choice of the Libyan people. And nobody can dictate to us how to run our lives. We should respect each other on that sense.
Well, we need to do this if we are going to try and live in civility in an international context where, as you say earlier, we are becoming a global village, and the communication is becoming more and more. We really do have to try and learn to respect one another, and also to try and keep as much as we can the fragile nature of what international organizations we have, one that does not just degenerate into the strong will do as they will and the weak must do as they must, might makes right kinds of perceptions, which it seems to be there's a good deal of that involved in terms of the indictment that was issued in the, against you, it would seem.
Well, this is how's the case, at least right now, but we're still hopeful that people come to their senses and make the right decision, because we live in a world where we need each other, and we need to put into better use our economic and human resources properly. But to engage in hostilities and classifying people as enemies and allies, and this is really ridiculous. And even if we want to be the enemy, we won't choose the United States as the enemy. It's a stupid to even think of choosing an enemy like the United States. There is no even logical reason to choose a country like the United States, far away from us, will not match to the United States military or politically or economically, and there is no point. We have differences. You have differences even in this country.
Of course, there always
on
are.
certain issues.
Yes.
Even NAFTA, for example, people think it's good, people think it's bad. Why, if you allow that kind of differences to exist among you, why you deny it? You deny certain countries to be independent on certain issues and to have their saying on certain issues. At least in the past, the world is becoming, is going through a lot of changes these days. Even some of these issues used to separate us are no longer there. We hope that we can have peaceful coexistence in the Middle East based on respect, for example, for the Palestinian determination. That's an issue used to separate us. Now it looks like you change your mind and you are willing to accept the Palestinian to live together with the Jewish people in Palestine. It's welcome. We welcome that. We used to have certain differences. I think they are no longer there, at least with the old administration. So why should the United States continue the old policies of the old administration and to not have the courage to say enough is enough? Let's put in better use and see what we can do together. We are willing to work with the United States to eliminate international terrorism, to eliminate injustice to anywhere, but so far we haven't had a chance to have a dialogue or sit together on a table with American-like civilized people. And I think it's about time.
Yeah, I think it is too, and that we should be particular, as an American, we should be particularly careful with the 40 years of containment of the Soviet Union and the coming apart of that challenge to us, that there are people who say that we need to have enemy in order to have a dialectic against which we can vent our sense of animosity, and if we don't have enemies, we'll have to invent them or something. And Libya has been one. You weren't really supportive of the Soviet Union, so you were in a certain sense isolated in a very real sense, and a target for a scapegoating attitude that had been directed against you. But the indictment itself comes against these two people that are Libyans. They want them to be handed over to be tried here in the United States or in United Kingdom. I wonder if you could address yourself a little bit to the indictment and to the case at hand, because it's on the table at the moment.
Well, I think the indictment itself, nobody object to the indicting anybody, because
anyone can indict.
Anybody can be indicted. But to use the indictment of two accused Libyans to punish a country without giving a chance to a court to have their saying, I think it's wrong.
Through the United Nations.
Through the United Nations or any acceptable format. I think it's wrong, because it's not even American way to prejudge or to punish a country just on a mere suspicion of two accused.
Maybe we should spell it out a little. They're trying to spell out in the indictment that there were two people in Malta who put a bag on a flight going to Frankfurt, which was supposedly transferred to Flight 103, the responsible authorities in Malta have shown that there was no unaccompanied baggage. There's been tremendous amount of investigation of this report, which increasingly shows that Libya was not involved in that, which would be consistent with the pattern of disinformation that had been directed against Libya in the past, as far as this indictment was concerned, and obviously they do this. They have denied the Montreal Convention of 1971 as a context, which was the one that they had signed on to. The United States has denied that. Libya has taken all steps, as I understand it, in order to investigate the indictment as it was brought down. They took all steps and had suggested this be taken to an international court of justice. And in the face of all of this, the United States remains adamant in terms of neither giving over the information they supposedly have to support the indictments, or of considering an alternative international venue where the issue might be brought up. And they've put you and boxed you into a corner and said, in a certain sense, to many of the American people in the world in general, we know things we won't tell you, but we do know, and you must. I'm wondering if maybe you could spell it out a little bit.
Well, I think you outlined most of the difficulty in this case. As everybody knows, from the first start, we said we are willing to cooperate fully with the countries involved and with the Security Council Resolution 731. And we said we'll be glad to have a trial for the two. Give us the information and we will put them on a trial. They said, no, we're not going to give you any information. And we know why they won't give any information, because they don't have it. And we said, we're willing to cooperate with you. We're willing to go to anywhere where we can have a fair trial for these two. They said, no, you have to come to us. We said, be fair. If we said we're willing to give these two guys voluntarily to have a fair trial in a third country, why should you oppose it? If you have evidence, you can always use this evidence against them and let them have a trial.
Yes.
We're not against trial. We're against dictating that this trial should only take place in the United States or Britain, as if there is no any other justice in the world except in these two countries.
By what right does the writ of the United States run in all the world? I mean, and also, how do you avoid Star Chamber or a secret tribunal how can you be certain that you can get a fair trial or justice if that were to occur? But more importantly is it invalidates so much of the legal understanding of international law, and again the delicate fabric of the structure of the United Nations itself, by the fact that the Security Council has gone along with this imposition of the power of the great powers.
Well, I think unfortunately
it would seem
some of these countries, powerful countries, they misuse the Security Council in involving a criminal indictment into the Security Council affairs.
It's a legal matter.
It's a legal matter and should be handled by courts. But because of the misuse, they involve the Security Council. And because
to try and force.
Yes, we want to show our good faith in cooperating fully. We did whatever humanly possible to cooperate with them in any possible sense. But no country on earth will surrender its nationals to any other sovereignty. This is against our domestic laws and against international laws.
And it would never pass the people's congresses.
Right.
To say, we're going to hand them over. The people would not agree to that.
Right. but we're for a trial.
Yes.
We don't insist that this trial should take place in Libya.
Mm-hmm.
What else can you ask for? We said, choose any country that you think it's acceptable to you, and let's agree that we can go, we send these two accused to that country and have a fair trial.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with that?
What is wrong with that, in their view?
I think they don't want us to comply because they don't have any evidence, and with this situation, they can always use it and could use Libya as a scapegoat.
If there were a trial...
Because they make it so impossible
Mm-hmm.
that we cannot comply to their terms, and this is the situation it looks they want us to be in.
Yeah, and they vote sanctions through, which have,
yes.
have great suffering upon your people. There have been deaths resulting because of this. Medical attention can't be done. You can't fly in and out of the country.
Another misuse of the Security Council,
Mm-hmm.
because they will say we have the legitimacy of the so-called international legitimacy. But it's another misuse of Security Council by involving Security Council in this matter improper. And they, as I said, on mere suspicion, they made the whole country a place where it becomes impossible to live. You cannot fly, you cannot function properly, and you are off balance all the time.
Yeah, right.
And I don't think this is fair.
No.
And it's not an American way of really responding to differences. I think the best way to handle this situation is to have a fair trial. This is good for the victims, the family victims.
Yes.
This is good for justice. This is good for knowing what happened.
If there were a fair trial and there was a trial, then there could be a context where all the evidence could be brought out.
Right.
Expert witnesses could be called. It would seem to me they might be able to, a lawyer or people might be able to argue the long history of the relationship of charges of terrorism leveled against you by the United States government. It might be interesting to have some of these things brought out as part of the historical context of understanding. And this would be, and also a court proceeding to which all the world might be able to be available through. We now have a television channel in this country called Court TV, where there could be availability of these things going on to the world, and it might be that many things would be found out that they might not want to be having brought out into the light of day, as it were.
Well,
do you think, or not?
Well,
maybe that's stretching it a bit.
Well, I think as long as these two accused can have a fair trial, that's okay with us.
Yes.
This is our objective, because we want to clear our name, and if these two, they have any evidence that could make them guilty, I think...
Then they should be punished.
Right.
Yeah.
And should be presented to the court.
Mm-hmm.
But to punish a country and a whole country on a mere suspicion of two accused.
As these sanctions have, and they're threatening harsher sanctions.
Of harsher sanctions because of this. That's ridiculous, and I don't think it's going to contribute to any peace or security in our region. And I think it's wrong.
And I heard you say earlier that it is a precedent in a certain sense, and so it doesn't affect only Libya, but it affects, again, the fabric of the structure of the Security Council itself and the United Nations, and this could affect, what affects Libya today could affect another weaker state, even Security Council members themselves. Later, we want to avoid a world of the strong will do as they will, and the weak must do as they must. Might makes right. This we have to do. We have to move toward a world of law and dialogue. And so it makes it dangerous as a precedent, not only for Libya, but for the structure of the United Nations and for the delicate fabric of international understanding, which is so important at this crucial time of world history.
That's true. I think the credibility of the Security Council is in danger unless we correct this. I think we live in a situation where each country should be counted. And I think in order to ensure peace and security, we have to work together. And we have to deal with each other. And we have to have dialogue with each other. And I think confrontation, it doesn't serve anybody. Hostility, nobody needs hostilities.
And scapegoating.
And scapegoating and whipping boys. I think we can do a lot better without any of this, and we can live together in peace and harmony.
Yeah, we can live together in peace and harmony, and have the concept of the town meeting, the concept of the varying giving of ideas, one that can become the context within which a country operates and policy is set and so forth. And I think it would be interesting within that broader context of the true nature of what's going on as far as Libya is concerned, to the degree it's able to be made available to the American people. I think they very well might find it very much more interesting than the disinformation that has been directed against your country. It seems to me, from my perspective, by a compliant media, by and large, to a misinformed attitude toward your country over the years, for which I, in the name of the American people, would, in a certain sense, apologize and hope that this interview may have helped, in a small measure, to help right the record.
Well, I think you're correct, and I hope the time will come, and I hope the time will come sooner to live this kind of expectation. And I think we need each other. And the only way to live with each other is to understand each other and respect each other. Without it, all of us will be losers.
Yes, indeed. And it calls for dialogue, and let's hope we've done that. Begun part of that process here, at least in the electronic aspect of the communications capability of this World Village, or Global Village. And Dr. Houderi, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I would remind you in the audience, it's been your pleasure to have the perceptions of Dr. Ali El Houderi, current ambassador to Libya at the United Nations. Happy to bring you those perceptions. We invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again next week here on Conversations. Dr. El Houderi, once again, thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you.
Good night. We'll see you next week.